Just side note, Monster energy drinks are everywhere in this game. Like, your canteen, they say, is filled with Monster energy. When Norman Reedus gets into the shower, his show from AMC Ride is like over where his butt would be. It's a weird game. It's Kojima. I wanted to talk to you about a game that I happen to be playing and a mechanic that I found quite interesting in that particular game.
Yes.
Now, I should probably explain to you what I'm talking about.
Yes, and everybody else too.
Yeah, okay. So, recently I started playing a little bit of a game called Death Stranding. Now, in case you're not familiar with Death Stranding, it is a Hideo Kojima game. This is like the first one that he made through his own development house since he's gotten away from Konami. And it has a pretty stellar, like, A-list cast, and it was a little bit different than people probably thought.
Yeah, they didn't know he was as weird as they thought it could be.
Well, I mean, anyone who played the Metal Gear franchise probably already had an inkling, but the general storyline is that you are in this world that is like kind of ruined and has a lot of these invisible shadow creatures that are trying to kill everybody, stalking the landscape and, rapidly increasing time and like these anomalies around it. And basically, you as your main character, the Norman Reedus in this particular case, it's not the character's name, but the actor. But anyway, Norman Reedus, basically, is this porter that is tasked with taking deliveries from one installation to another to try and reconnect the world back together. So, the main mechanic in the game, which I think is really the sticking point that kind of divided people on how they felt about it, was walking.
Yes.
There's a lot of walking involved.
One could call it a walking sim, but I feel like you'll get into more information about this.
Yeah, so I actually wanted to address that because I will have a longer Titanium Mind talking about the game overall, but the walking sim thing is, I feel like a very big misnomer when it comes to Death Stranding, having played it and having played my fair share of actual walking sims. Because when I think about a walking sim, I think about What Remains of Edith Finch, Dear Esther, Firewatch, that kind of stuff. And those are games. I'll tell you the difference, basically. Those are games where there is a narrative through line, and the way you experience that narrative through line is through the act of walking. The point of the game is to go through the narrative. Walking is basically your conduit to get from point A to point B. The difference with Death Stranding is that walking is actually the main mechanic of the game. The whole gameplay is based around you figuring out how to get from this installation to this installation, over hills, over rocky surfaces, over rivers and streams, and mountains, etc. And so, not just getting your packages that are weighing you down over this very rough terrain, but also how am I going to climb up or down this landscape by using, climbing gear and your ladders and, different post boxes and stuff like that. Yes.
I have the idea. We're gonna use an ornithopter.
You know what? I don't think there's an ornithopter in the game.
Well, if there was, solve all the problems.
Yes. Until those guys with guns come and start shooting at you. There are guys with guns.
Bombs.
Okay. I have gotten to a point where you do get a kind of...
bomber, if you will.
Ooh, that's fun. I have gotten to the point where they are experimenting with a grenade that's supposed to... repel these mean spirit things. So
okay.
they are introducing some weaponry at this point.
Good.
But anyway, and also by the way, eventually you do get like a bike and other like vehicles, so it does make it easier to get across the landscape. But you do still have to figure out how you're putting down bridges and how you're going to have trails so that your bike can get from point A to point B. But mostly for the first like 5 or 6 hours of the game, you're pretty much hoofing it directly from point A to point B. Now, what I wanted to talk to you about is the idea, or maybe the criticism, of walking as a main mechanic in the game. And I'll tell you a little bit about how they implement this in a little more detail, because there's weight requirements that your character can actually hold on to, and you can take on multiple packages. You can find other packages throughout the world that have been dropped by other players, and you can pick those up. As you increase weight and the weight on your back or on your suit gets higher, it becomes harder for you to keep balanced. Which means that if you're on like rocky terrain and you make a turn, you have to right yourself to avoid falling over by doing button presses, almost like it's a QuickTime event.
Okay.
To make sure that you can right yourself, or I guess left yourself, depending on what direction you're going in. It's very easy to stumble over the landscape. What they also do is they have a scanner that will show you with a little color-coded thing what is more tricky terrain or dangerous terrain, even if they're the little tiny pebbles that happen to be in your way, and we know a thing or two about pebbles. But
yeah, we do.
Yeah, and you will actually have a total pebble knockdown if you get onto these pebbles without shoring yourself up. There are points in the game too where, as long as your hands are free, you can actually kind of like, put your hands onto your vest so that you don't have to worry about swaying off, but it makes you slower. And so if you have anything time sensitive, it makes it harder for you to actually get there in a time frame that works. So now you got to think about the pros and cons when you actually have the stealthy sections, because the big shadow creatures can sense you. You have to think about breath control, because they can like sense your breath, so you have to hold your breath. You have to navigate around. The little sensor will give you an idea where the invisible creatures are and kind of bleep. You're also still going over that terrain, and the rain is coming down and degrading your packages while you're doing that. So now you have a lot of different things. So like I said, this is not like a walking simulator like we think of. There's a lot of mechanics that are going into this.
Almost like Hideo Kojima went, how can we make walking extreme?
And he pretty much did that. Walking in this game is a very trepidatious thing. You can ford across streams, but you have a stamina meter, and it will run out really quickly when you're fording through those streams. Running is an option, but as you get more weight on you, your stamina decreases faster as you're going forward. It makes it harder for you to walk. You are slower. These things factor in. Weight factors in. There's even a mechanic where your boots degrade over time, and you might have to fashion yourself new ones, because it's the only piece of equipment you need to fashion, or just your boots. No other armor, just your boots.
Just one crafting. It's your shoes.
It's your shoes.
One could say you are a cobbler.
You are a cobbler.
Cobble them together.
Sponsored by Ride on AMC and Monster Energy. I'm sorry. Just side note. Monster Energy drinks are everywhere in this game. Like, your canteen, they say, is filled with Monster Energy. When Norman Reedus gets into the shower, his show from AMC Ride is like over where his butt would be. It's a weird game. It's Kojima. What do you want? I was telling you earlier, there's a character in this with a black skull for the mask that he wears over his head that's just called Die Hard Man. Just go for it, Kojima. I don't care. But the fact of the matter is that the walking mechanics in the game ended up being a lot more extreme than you would think of for a walking simulator. Because I never had to worry about any of this stuff in a walking simulator the way I've played.
Yeah, they're generally very casual games. elements.
Yes, they're there pretty much just to allow you to move through the landscape and explore that landscape.
It's exploration of the environment. It's not, oh my god, I need to climb this mountain and I need to figure out where to place my ladder and my package is falling apart and my shoes just ripped a hole in them.
Yeah, and now I tripped and 3 of my packages fell off and now I have to go and see if I can collect them before they degrade, because if they degrade too much, I don't really get much credit for them when I actually bring them to the site that they're supposed to go to. So it's a little bit different between, the exploration of a landscape and the actual traversal mechanics of a landscape. So the point that I'm trying to get to is that I'm trying to pinpoint if this is a good idea or a bad idea, because it does feel like when Death Stranding was released and people started playing it, this seemed to be the major point of contention for people. Whether they loved it or they hated it, seemed to be relative to, do I like this as a central mechanic of the game? The actual movement of your character being centralized to the game. I mean,
honestly, Mario, the central mechanic is movement. Actually, the central mechanic is jumping.
Yeah. Classic Mario.
People love Mario, so...
It's true.
If you're gonna have a whole game based around jumping, I don't see why this is a big issue.
Right. I guess the jumping is usually seen as a more interesting thing than walking.
Sure. Okay, well, it's like drunk walk simulator.
It's like Mario, but he's been on a bender and he can't really jump that high. And so he's like, it's me, Mario. And he kind of stumbles through the landscape. And now the jumping part that you have to do is over the tiny little rocks that are in your path going forward. The actual building of the landscape, where you're actually putting up the ladders and stuff like that, that's a little bit more part of Death Stranding particularly. You don't really do that in a Mario, so to speak. But Mario does have combat. I mean, you have to jump on top of the heads of all the little creatures. And there is combat, I guess, I should say, there is indeed combat and enemies to fight in Death Stranding, but it's not really the centralized thing that you do. In similar fashion to the fact that Mario, the centralized thing that you do is the platforming, of jumping and hopping and stuff like that. Do we get down too much into the minutia of these mechanics, though? Like, when we're actually playing this, is it a good idea in a game to say that I have to think about every little rock that's in my way? Or have we gotten to the point where now it's just going to slow down or hinder the game because this is now the focus? The little rock, the little pebble in my way is now the central antagonist to my game in this moment. Is that too much?
If that's what the focus is, then no, I don't think that's too much. I mean, it may not be for everyone, but if your central mechanic is keeping yourself balanced and, like, getting from point A to point B traversal, and dealing with the stuff in the way, then it makes sense. I mean, maybe not every tiny pebble, but, like, if you're on a rocky trail, like, it's almost like if you had a game and it was just focused on hiking. And you start off easy on, like, a well-traveled path, and you get to a part where you're scrabbling hands and feet up a mountainside. You know?
Yeah.
There are people who would enjoy that, and then there are people who would fucking hate it.
It's true. I have not played that game. What was it? Insurmountable? That's actually about the mountain climbing?
That's nothing like that.
It's not. Okay. Well, you can speak to experience. I have it, but I have not played it.
It's interesting. It's an interesting game. Play it sometime. It's a roguelite.
Oh, okay. So that is a little bit different.
But it's also resource management and like tactical.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's interesting. It's not bad though.
Okay. Good to know. At some point, I'll try it. One of the interesting things, though, that I did find from a design perspective about Death Stranding in that regard is that as you, like, increase in level and stuff, you will notice that other players have put down elements in the game that you can utilize to make it easier for you to get through it. So you'll be going across the landscape and find that another player has conveniently left this ladder that you can utilize, and then you can tell them, I liked the ladder. The currency in this game is basically likes. I like the ladder, thank you for the ladder, sir. And then you can utilize it. Because the larger theme of the Kojima game, at least in this, if we were talking about the larger philosophical theme, is the idea that out of a ruined world, it can really only be rebuilt by the collective actions of the whole. So, yeah, so as other people add elements, it becomes easier for the next player to traverse that landscape going forward. So that's an interesting idea, and trying to figure out how to, like, cross a chasm or anything like that is neat. It's definitely unlike anything that I've ever played. I just didn't think that I was going to be playing a game where seeing, like, some rocks in my way was going to cause anxiety. I didn't think that was going to be the central mechanic. Like, literally, later on in the game, I was on my bike, and, like, I'm screaming past, like, these, I think they're called mules. They're like, mercenaries that are out there shooting at me. And I wasn't worried about them. I was worried because it looked like there was a cliff face coming up, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I can make that. Am I going to go into a rock? Oh god, no. How am I going to get across that stream? Yeah, I get it, there's guys shooting at me, whatever. But that stream looks awfully deep. I don't know if I can get across that. So, I guess kudos to Hideo Kojima for making me more scared of terrain than of the dudes shooting at me.
Yeah. The rocks were the real big, bad, evil guys all along.
Yep, the big, boulder, evil guy. Perfect. Anyway, I'd be interested to hear everybody else's thoughts on this. Do you think that terrain is actually something that needs to be contentious? Should I, in a game, decide that the landscape itself is the enemy?
Think Death Stranding 2 Electric Boogaloo needs to be non-Euclidean.
Oh boy. I thought you were going to say that we should electrify the entire landscape.
No, even better. Death Stranding 2 non-Euclidean geometry.
Oh god.
Now your anxiety comes from, does that staircase go up or down? Fuck.
Yeah. I just want my next Death Stranding to be designed by MC Escher.
Yeah, non-Euclidean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Enjoy the endless staircase, Norman Reedus. You'll enjoy. You go through one door, you come out the other, your packages fall down immediately.
That Perfect. Brings us right into the next segment, too.
Hey, how's that? Okay,